Good morning, Brimfield and Facebook followers. Nick Coy here, trustee for candidate at Brimfield Township. And I wanted to do this video so that we could talk a little bit about how I operate and some of the fact-finding pieces I put together. And I think it's important that we have the facts before we make a decision. Today we're here with John, our fiscal officer for Brimfield Township, and I wanted you to understand a little bit more about our budget. We did the bucket video earlier this year and talked about how those revenue streams work, but I think it's important we have a better understanding of those pieces. So today I want to talk first about our JEDD. And from what I understand, in our township we have two JEDDs, one with Brimfield, one with Talmadge, and one with the City of Kent.
Right.
And a JEDD is basically a joint economic development district that allows the township to capture some payroll taxes.
That's correct.
And those dollars coming in, we then distribute evenly amongst the police, fire, and road department, and then 10% over to the general fund.
That's right.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how those dollars come in and what we do with those dollars?
Sure. Thanks, Nick. Also, thank you for taking the time to figure out how everything works. What happens with the JEDD? It's a payroll tax.
Okay.
Before, in the early 2000s, we were being annexed by Talmadge and Kent. So this was put together as a way to keep Brimfield Township. They were taking all of our commercial areas and leaving us with the very costly residential stuff. So what we did is that we put a JEDD together to stop that for the next 100 years. It's out there way after all of us that are watching this video are going to be around. So what it does do, though, is it takes that payroll tax that if you lived in the city of Kent or in Talmadge, you're going to pay at least a 2% payroll tax. Correct. Townships are not allowed to tax, only cities are. So the only way we could get that tax dollar to stay at home here in Brimfield is to work these deals out with the JEDDs through Kent and Talmadge. They take the taxes out, it goes to our JEDD, and then we get a percentage of it. The way it works is that the city takes half the money.
Yep.
We get 40% of the money, and then they also contribute to what's called a maintenance and improvement fund, and Brimfield Township controls that money. So there's a calculation, but it's pretty much 50-50. We control 50% of the money, and so do they. Well, that's money that we would have never received if we weren't in the JEDDs. They would just take all of it. So it's a great thing that's been put in place for Brimfield. But then what we do is we split that money around. 30% goes to police, fire, and roads for their general operating expenses. Correct. Then 10% goes into the general fund, and then there's a maintenance improvement fund for things that happen within the JEDD that we spend.
So with that said, with the Maple Crest deal that a lot of people have been talking about in our township and they're concerned about, sure, if that piece actually moves forward on that golf course there, we would be collecting JEDD dollars off of all those construction workers, bringing additional revenue.
Oh, right? Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that the spike comes when we're getting all the construction guys that are in there building all that stuff. They're coming from Cleveland, making a bigger dollar. We get that money while they're here. So, and what will happen after we get all that money ahead of time, or not ahead of time, while they're building it, but after it's there for the next 100 years, right, we're going to get payroll taxes for there that actually get spread out and go into those accounts like we discussed. Right. One of the things that it does, though, there's no money tree out back. We have to, it's coming out of everybody's pocket here in Brimfield Township for all the services that we provide. What that does is it reduces the amount of money that we have to go back to the citizens of Brimfield to request levy dollars for. We're getting it from another revenue source, and that helps us reduce our tax rate here in Brimfield Township.
So that helps us keep our costs down.
It's a huge positive thing for Brimfield Township.
You know, another thing that we should talk a little bit about today is levies. And we've passed multiple levies in our township. We have some for police, fire, and our roads. And I think there's some misconceptions about how we can utilize those dollars. So let's take the road levies, for example. A few years ago, we passed a road levy because many of the citizens wanted to improve our roads. And once we get on a good maintenance and repair program with that, the question is can I take those levy dollars and apply them to the police department or fire department to build a new building? Absolutely. My understanding is that we can't. But I think there's some misconception out there. So can you talk just a little bit about how those are dedicated funds when we pass a levy?
Sure. Any of the levy funds, and the answer to that is absolutely not. You cannot do that. Those monies that are assigned by when you pass a levy, they're assigned to that specific levy that you paid for. So let's just use the roads as an example. We passed the levy. We have two of them that are out there now. That money is dedicated to roads only, the maintenance and improvement of the roads. So we have a big list, and we work off of a list. It'd be great to tell everybody that the levies were $10 billion and we can pave everybody's road tomorrow. Right. That's not how it works, because we're taking money out of your pocket as a levy, and we don't want to take too much, but we're doing as best that we can with that dollar that's out there. So we have a list, a priority list that we use. At no time am I ever able to go over to the police department or fire department and say, hey, the roads are really bad, I need to pull some of that money. That is an absolute no. That'll never be done. But what we have to keep in mind is that there are other things. It's kind of like your home budget. I mean, you make, let's say, I'll just pick this number, let's say you make $50,000 a year. Right. Well, you have a house payment, you have car insurance, you have a car payment, all electric, cable, all those things come out of that $50,000. You don't make, on the January 1st, you don't have $50,000 sitting there that you can go out and build onto your house with. Right. That money it goes throughout the whole year, and you get it in every 26 pays bi-weekly. Right. The township also gets draws throughout the year as well, so we don't get it all on January 1st. But out of that money that's sitting out there, we have expenses. We have payroll, we have insurance, we have workers' comp, we have fuel, we have all salt for the roads, we have all kinds of these known expenses. So probably 90%, 95% of our budget is pretty much spoken for before the year even starts, to make payroll, to make all the expenses that we know about, which leaves a small amount of our dollars that come through. In 2016, we talked about it, looked at it a little earlier ago, we had $40,000 that was sitting out there in the general fund that was not spoken for. Right. What the trustees do at that point is you guys come up with a priority list, and I don't. From my perspective, that's your job there to figure out what things are on that list. Correct. What things have the most importance on those. If you gave me a list of 10 things and they were all, to get them all done was $150,000 and we only had $40,000, right, you're going to have to make some smart choices for the good of Brimfield Township, which things we want to do. Right. But things do change throughout the year, so you can't say, hey, we're going to absolutely do this, because our budget is a fluid budget. If we had something that changed dramatically in town and we had to move dollars around, that list moves around as well.
So, for example, we had a large fire that was taxing on the fire department, or we had a road collapse like we had in the past, right, we would need to be able to move those funds, and therefore those special projects that we want to work on weren't necessarily the top priority at that point because we need to continue services.
That's right. Because we're never going to be able to fix all the things at the same time in town. Right.
And I think that's where that 5-year plan is. And I know some of the departments have started working on that, but that's part of my goal is to have a strong 5-year plan to say, hey, if we do want to improve our parks, we can start planning for it, setting a little bit aside here and there to eventually make those improvements there. Yes. But to go out and say that we're going to do it tomorrow, I can't promise that because we know that it's a fluid budget at any time something could change.
That is correct. And I think that you've hit the point here a couple different times here. It's working with the money on a daily basis. I mean, and if what I try to get people to think this budget can be scary and complicated, it's really not. Right. If you think about it the way that your own personal budget works, I mean, you think that you're planning for a vacation, and you guys all have that money set aside for the year, and now your transmission goes out in your car. Well, you got to fix your transmission in your car. You had to get that money from somewhere. Things change. So maybe your vacation just got pushed off a few months or pushed off altogether or however it would have done. So it's the best thing with this in a board and where they should be involved with this is working with the process throughout the year. Right. I feel fine by your questions. You seem to have a very good, control over that or an idea of how that works, and that's the smart way to do. Anybody that would come into this office saying that, hey, we're going to guarantee that we're doing this and that and this and that years before it even happens it just doesn't work that way.
Right. So. Yeah, and that's, and I really want our residents to understand. That's one of the things that I do is I work closely with everybody and do my research to understand how some of these processes work. Mm-hmm. And that's why I stick behind my messaging that, I promise I'll do the best I can with what we have. I'm not going to promise you to oversell you just to get a vote. It's about understanding these processes, and that's why I can't promise you all brand new roads in the next 4 years. We'll work towards it, but it's a fluid process and it's ever changing.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today.
Sure.
And good luck very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And as usual, like my video, share my video, and if you have any questions, make comments below. Have a great day.